I was just about to shut my laptop for lunch when the email popped up. No subject line. No context. Just a shared file titled Comp Overview Final. It was from Kyle in HR. At first, I thought it was another boring policy update. But the moment I opened it, something shifted. The spreadsheet stared back at me. Neatly formatted rows. Employee names I recognized. Positions. And then the numbers. I blinked. Thinking I had misread something, I refreshed the page. Once. Twice. The numbers didn't change. Tristan Adler. 8 months with the company. Salary $142,000. Vanessa Lune. 14 months in. $134,504. Mason Reeves. 2 years. $137,000. All of them had been trained by me. Some of them had asked me, just this week, how to fix errors in their quarterly reports. And every single one of them made close to 40% more than I did. I kept scrolling. My name didn't even show up on the first page. I had to keep going. Page 2. Still nothing. Page 3. There it was. Natalie. 9 years with the company. Salary $98,750. 9 years. I felt the sound in the office go quiet around me. Not literally. Keyboard still clicked. Phone still rang. Someone was microwaving fish again. But in my body, everything went still. Like I had been knocked off balance but hadn't hit the ground yet. I kept looking at the screen, rereading the same line, hoping the numbers would magically shift, hoping this was a mistake. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was something worse. I was hollow. This wasn't just about money. This was about worth, value, visibility. For almost a decade, I had built the financial backbone of this company. Automated systems that saved thousands of hours. Reconciliations that passed audits with no findings. Protocols that caught errors before they cost real dollars. I had been the person they called late at night when something broke. The one who stayed calm when the numbers didn't add up. I had trained every new hire in finance, including the ones now making 6 figures while still asking me how to do their jobs. And yet, in this spreadsheet, I was buried. 3 pages deep. Nearly $40,000 behind people who still relied on my guidance. A minute later, Kyle's recall email hit our inboxes. Message recalled. Too late. I had already downloaded the file, saved it to a secure folder in my personal drive. Not because I planned to leak it. Not because I was going to confront anyone. Not yet. I just needed to remember this moment. The clarity of it. The sharp edge of knowing. It's funny. You can give a place your best years. Your best ideas. Your weekends and your nights. You can believe, maybe naively, that hard work speaks for itself. That if you just keep your head down and do good work, someone will notice. Someone will reward you. But that day, staring at that spreadsheet, I realized something I hadn't let myself admit before. They saw my work. They just didn't see me. That was the day everything changed. Not on the outside. I didn't slam my laptop or storm into an office. I didn't cry in the bathroom or text my sister in a rage. I just sat there, very still, and let the truth settle. I was never going to be valued here the way I deserved. And for the first time, I stopped waiting for someone else to fix it. I decided I would. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was upset. I was past upset. What I felt was something heavier, like gravity pulling in a new direction. I kept replaying the spreadsheet in my head, line by line, face by face. And all the times I had gone above and beyond without ever asking for anything in return, it all felt suddenly, painfully calculated, and not by me. By morning, the decision was made. I wasn't going to wait for the next performance review cycle. I wasn't going to write another carefully worded email or request a meeting weeks out just to be told the same rehearsed excuses. I walked into the office, straight to Daniel's door. 2 knocks. No appointment. He looked up, surprised. As if I were a disruption. I had worked under him for 6 years, helped clean up his messes more than once. And yet, that look, it said everything. Something urgent, he asked. Already annoyed. I didn't sit. I opened my laptop and turned it toward him. The spreadsheet. His eyes flicked to the screen. A pause. Then the faintest shift in his expression. A tightening around the eyes. He knew exactly what I had found. And just like that, the mask came back on. You know I can't discuss other employees' compensation, he said, already leaning back in his chair. I'm not asking about them, I replied. Calm. Deliberate. I'm asking about me. I scrolled to my row. 9 years. Daniel. I've built every financial system this company uses. I've trained every name on this list who's now making tens of thousands more than me. How does that make sense? He sighed. That deep. Performative sigh managers use when they want you to feel like you're the problem. The market has changed since you were hired. Natalie. New hires are brought in at current rates. Your compensation was set in a different economy. Then update it. It's not that simple, he said, already shrugging. There are structures, salary bands, policy. That shrug. I will never forget it. As if he were brushing crumbs off his shirt. As if my 9 years, my 60-hour weeks, my institutional knowledge were a mild inconvenience. My hands were steady. But something inside me had shifted. This wasn't anger. It was clarity. I'd like to request a formal compensation review. You can, he said, glancing at his watch. But it'll be denied. We just finished annual reviews. You got your standard 3% bump. That's the policy. I stood there for a second longer. Not because I needed anything from him, but because I wanted to remember how this felt. This precise moment. The final confirmation. It wasn't that they didn't know my value. It was that they'd done the math and decided I'd tolerate less. I closed my laptop, nodded once, and left his office without another word. I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. Later that day, someone left a pastry box in the break room. There was laughter. Someone's birthday. Maybe. I passed by, smiled politely, and kept walking. I had no appetite for small talk. There's a moment in every quiet person's life when they realize silence isn't virtue. It's currency. And mine had been spent too cheaply. For too long. That afternoon, I cleared my evening. I had something to write. Not an angry email. Not a resignation. Not yet. Something better. Something sharper. Something they couldn't ignore. That night, I didn't pour a drink out of habit. I poured it with intention. A modest glass of grocery store Cabernet. Nothing fancy. Nothing celebratory. Just quiet company while I opened my laptop at the kitchen table and stared at a blank document. No tears. No spiral. No calls to friends to rehash every insult. I didn't need to replay it. It was etched now. In full detail. Into the way I held my posture. Into the way I breathed. I titled the document The Cost of Institutional Memory. And then I began to write, not like a person making a complaint, like a person building a case. I started at the beginning. 2014. Hired as a financial analyst. Built the company's first automated reporting system, saving 30 hours a week in manual labor. 2015. Promoted to senior analyst. Reworked accounts receivable procedures. Cut outstanding collections by 42%. 2016. created a compliance framework that passed a federal audit with 0 findings, first clean audit in the company's history. I documented everything. Every time I stepped up without being asked. Every time I caught a mistake no one else saw. Every project finished early. Every deadline met. Every fire put out quietly before anyone even knew it was burning. I didn't write emotionally. I wrote surgically. I listed names, teams, quantifiable results. I wrote like someone who had been told her value was difficult to measure and had decided to make it undeniable. By midnight, I had 27 pages. By 2 a.m., 36. By dawn, 43. The final page held one number. The amount I had personally saved the company in the last fiscal year, $267,459, followed by the market gap between my current salary and what I should be making, $39,500. The math wasn't complicated. The message wasn't angry. It was irrefutable. I printed the report at an all-night print shop that also offered professional binding. Leather cover. Gold title. I watched them trim the edges clean and package it with care. Then I went home. Showered. Pressed my blouse and pulled out the pencil skirt I had bought 3 years ago after my last promotion. Still with the tags on. I slid the report into my tote, along with 2 other documents. The first, a signed offer letter from Horizon Financial Solutions, $145,000 a year. Full benefits. Flexible hours. A leadership role. They had been quietly recruiting me for months. I had never really considered it. Until now. The second, my resignation letter. Dated. Clear. Professional. I arrived at the office just after 7:15. The lights were low. The hallways empty. Garrett's assistant wasn't at her desk yet. I didn't hesitate. I walked into his office and placed the 3 items in the center of his desk. Then I turned and walked back to mine. As I sat down and opened my email like it was any other morning, my heartbeat was steady. Not because I wasn't nervous. Because I knew this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. By 9:30, the office felt different. Not visibly. Not loudly. But there was a shift. A current. People walked a little slower past my desk. Their conversations were quieter. Focused. I knew why. The spreadsheet had circulated. The recall didn't matter. The damage was done. And the whispers had started. My phone rang. Garrett's extension. I let it ring twice before answering. Natalie. Could you come to my office? Please. His voice was clipped. Tense. Of course. I said. Like I didn't already know what this was about. I stood slowly. Picked up my notebook. Clicked my pen once. I could feel eyes on me as I crossed the floor. I didn't rush. I didn't avoid their looks. I didn't need to. Inside his office, Garrett wasn't alone. Daniel was there. Seated stiffly. Kyle from HR sat beside him. Sweat already forming at his temple. And next to Garrett, arms crossed, was Vanessa Chen, the COO. My report sat open on Garrett's desk. The leather-bound copy, its presence felt almost theatrical. Like a prop in a courtroom drama. Close the door. Please. Garrett said. I did. We've reviewed your document. He began, tapping the cover lightly. I have to say, it's thorough. Thank you, I said, voice even. Kyle jumped in. There seems to be some misunderstanding about compensation structures. There's no misunderstanding, I said, cutting him off without raising my voice. I've worked here 9 years. I've trained 5 people who now earn significantly more than I do. When I brought that to Daniel's attention, I was told it was company policy. So I'm making a business decision, based on the information provided. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. His mouth opened. then closed again. I turned to Garrett. The last section of my report includes a full knowledge transfer plan. Every system I've built. Every workaround. Every risk. It's all there. Department by department. You'll find it very clear. Vanessa finally spoke. You've clearly put a great deal of thought into this. Natalie. I have. Garrett leaned forward, folding his hands. What would it take for you to reconsider your resignation? I didn't blink. I had rehearsed this. My market value is already established. By your own internal compensation, and by my offer from Horizon. But this isn't just about salary. It's about 9 years of being overlooked, despite measurable impact. I paused. Let the silence stretch just long enough. I would need my salary adjusted to $150,000. A retroactive bonus to cover the gap over the past year, and a formal company-wide compensation audit to address similar inequities. Kyle inhaled sharply, like he had just witnessed something unspeakable. Daniel stared at the floor. Garrett said nothing. But I could feel him calculating. You understand that what you're asking is highly unusual, he finally said. So is building your entire financial infrastructure and training my replacements at a 40% discount for almost a decade. Outside his office, the team moved as if unaware. But I knew they were listening. Offices like this are built for polite eavesdropping. Garrett exhaled slowly. Give us 24 hours to prepare a formal response. I nodded. My resignation is effective in 2 weeks. The knowledge transfer plan requires at least 60 days. You have 24 hours to decide whether that gap is worth addressing. I stood. As I reached the door, Vanessa spoke again, just out of curiosity. Who made you the offer? I paused. Turned back slightly. Horizon Financial Solutions, I said. They're led by Catherine Walsh. I didn't need to explain the rest. Catherine had left this company 5 years ago under similar circumstances. Since then, she had built a competitor that had been quietly siphoning our best clients. The silence that followed was louder than anything else. I left them sitting there in it. I walked back to my desk like nothing had happened. Sat down. Logged in. Typed a few notes in a spreadsheet that didn't really matter. My phone lit up with a message from Catherine. Did you do it? I typed back one word. Yes. Her reply came almost instantly. Their loss. Our gain. Dinner tonight to celebrate. I smiled. Faintly. But it wasn't over yet. Not even close. Because the most valuable thing I had wasn't in that leather-bound analysis. It wasn't in my offer letter. Or even in the resignation I had just dropped on Garrett's desk. The real secret sat in a file I had been building for a 1.5 years. Something I hadn't spoken about. Not to HR. Not to Catherine. Not even to Meredith. My sister. Only me. It started small. 18 months ago. I flagged a vendor payment that didn't match any approved purchase order. $13,875 to a consulting firm I had never heard of. No project code. No department listed. I asked Daniel about it. He brushed it off. Executive leadership pre-approved it. He said, nothing for you to worry about. The same thing happened the next quarter. And the next? After the 3rd time, I stopped flagging them officially. I started logging them privately. I created a parallel spreadsheet. Quiet. Clean. I pulled transaction data. Compared vendor names. Payment cycles. Invoice formatting. It took time. Patience. But patterns always show themselves if you watch long enough. I found more vendors with no physical offices. No websites. Just P.O. box addresses and invoices that looked perfectly reasonable. Until you realized they repeated. Quarter after quarter. With only slight increases. By month 6, I was sure. Someone was siphoning company funds. The amounts were smart. Just under internal audit thresholds. Small enough to blend into quarterly budget shifts. Precise enough to stay consistent without raising suspicion. By month 12, I had built a map. Vendors, payment dates, disbursement flows. By month 16, I had linked them to 7 shell companies. And by month 18, I had traced every one of those shell companies back to a holding entity. Pinewood Ventures. It was registered under the name of Thomas Whitaker's brother-in-law. Thomas, the company's chief legal officer, the man who reviewed every contract, the man who had once told me I was too detail-focused, as if that were a weakness. I found matching signatures, found the incorporation documents, traced funds from Pinewood Ventures to private accounts and back again. It wasn't just fraud. It was elegant. A ghost operation tucked inside a company known for being financially airtight, because I had helped make it that way. That was the irony. They used the systems I built to hide the theft, and no one had noticed. Except me. Now I had 2 stories. The one I had told in my report, the visible one. The one about being undervalued, overlooked, underpaid. And then this one, the one I hadn't told yet. But I would. Not out of revenge. Not to burn anything down. To make sure they understood who they had underestimated. What happens when the quiet one keeps receipts. And why you never, ever mistake silence for surrender. 3 hours. That's how long it took before they called me back in. Not 24. Not even close. Conference room. Daniel's message read, "No subject. No explanation." I took my time walking there. The air in the office felt different now. Thicker. Eyes followed me. But no one said a word. The silence had changed shape. From passive disinterest to a kind of nervous curiosity. Inside the Pine Room, one of the company's nature-themed conference rooms that had always felt more performative than calming, Garrett sat at the head of the table. Daniel beside him. Vanessa. Composed but tense. And now, a new face, Thomas Whitaker. The general counsel, calm as ever. Poker-faced. Like he was born in a deposition. "Please. Sit," Garrett said. I did. Notebook. Pen. Straight posture. No need for nerves. Not today. Garrett began. Measured and formal. "We've reviewed your requests and are prepared to offer a revised compensation package." Thomas slid a printed document toward me. I didn't touch it right away. I let it sit there while I looked around the table. Salary adjustment to $155,000. Garrett continued. A retention bonus of $45,000. A new title, Senior Director of Financial Operations, and a seat on the Executive Leadership Committee. I finally picked up the document. Read every word slowly. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted them to sit with the discomfort of waiting. It was everything I had asked for. And then some. I looked up. "This is acceptable. Thank you." Daniel let out a breath like he had been holding it since I walked in. "We're glad we could resolve this internally," Garrett said with a tight smile. "Thomas will coordinate with HR to finalize everything." I began to gather my things. But Thomas cleared his throat. "There's one additional item," he said smoothly. "As part of this new agreement, we've included a standard confidentiality clause regarding compensation structures and any irregularities observed during your time here." There it was. The reason for his presence. I turned to him. Voice steady. "Irregularities, standard language," he replied. "Calm. Common in executive contracts." I let the silence hang before I answered. "I'll need to review that language carefully before signing. Please email it to me." "Of course," he said. But I noticed the twitch in his jaw. I stood. Walked to the door. Paused. "One more thing," I said, still facing forward. "I'd like written confirmation that the company will begin its compensation audit within 30 days. As we discussed." Garrett and Vanessa exchanged a glance. "We'll include that in the documentation," she said finally. I nodded and left. Their eyes stayed on me all the way out. Back at my desk. My phone buzzed. Catherine again. Update. I typed one line. Counter offer accepted. They're trying to bury the irregularities with an NDA. Her response came within seconds. Perfect. Proceed as planned. The next 2 weeks were fascinating. Suddenly, I was invited to meetings I had never been in before, people I had trained, who once ignored me in the hallway, now asked if I needed anything. Daniel brought me coffee. Black. No sugar. Just how I liked it. He didn't ask. He remembered. I signed the offer letter, but I sent the NDA back to legal with edits, clarifications, follow-up questions, things that took time, delays. Meredith, my sister, laughed when I told her. You're dragging this out on purpose, she said. I'm buying time, I replied, and showing them how expensive silence really is. Because here's the truth. When they realized they couldn't replace me, they tried to buy me. But my price, it was being valued while I was still here. That window had already closed. I started at Horizon on a Monday. Catherine met me at the door with 2 coffees and a smile that didn't need translation. To new beginnings, she said, handing me the one without sugar. Just how I liked it. I had barely stepped into my new office. Glass walls. Soft lighting. Clean desk. When I noticed something different. It wasn't the furniture or the view. It was the way people looked at me. Not with hesitation. Not with forced politeness. With recognition. They knew why I was here. And they were glad I had come. Catherine and I got to work immediately. Not on damage control, but on building something better. Something the old place had never even tried. Our first order of business was compensation transparency. No more secrets. No more quiet inequality hiding behind policy language and HR-approved scripts. We designed a salary framework tied to role, impact, and market value, not personality, politics, or timing. Every quarter, I personally reviewed the data, adjusted where needed, corrected gaps before they became wounds. People didn't just see the numbers, they understood them. And that changed everything. Within 6 months, we doubled our client portfolio. Not through ads. Not through cold calls. They came to us, quietly, one by one. Clients who had worked with me before. Clients who had heard Catherine speak at conferences. Clients who had grown tired of vague reports and missed deadlines from a company that used to have the best systems. Before I left, it wasn't about stealing business. It was about being the place people wanted to work with. The one that listened. The one that documented every dollar. The one that told the truth. Even when it was inconvenient. And the team they didn't just follow. They led. We built a culture around clarity. Not control. Around respect. Not reputation. Around value. Not just numbers. But people. One afternoon, Catherine and I sat in her office, reviewing our annual growth numbers. They were higher than we'd projected, almost unreal. You realize, she said, you've rebuilt everything they took for granted. I didn't answer right away. I just looked out the window at the skyline. A different part of the city. A different kind of view. They never saw me as a leader. I finally said. They saw me as reliable. Background support. Someone who'd always say yes. And now I decide what I say yes to. Catherine smiled. Took you long enough. I laughed. Not bitter. Not sarcastic. Just clean. We celebrated with champagne that night. The good kind. And I slept better than I had in years. It wasn't just the title. Or the salary. Or the fact that people returned my emails within minutes instead of days. It was the feeling that everything I'd built, every late night, every crisis averted, every ignored suggestion, had led here. To a place where it mattered. I wasn't just thriving. I was building the company I had once begged someone else to become. And this time, I wasn't waiting for permission. The fallout came slowly. Then all at once. 2 days before I was set to officially start my new role at Horizon, Garrett called. I let it go to voicemail the first time. When he called again, I picked up. Natalie. I was hoping we could talk, he said. His voice thinner than I'd ever heard it. The audit team is struggling, he continued. Some of the systems you built, they're having a hard time understanding your methodology. I almost laughed. My methodology, I said, is fully documented in the knowledge transfer plan I provided. The one you ignored when you thought a retention bonus would buy my silence. We're prepared to offer you a consulting fee, he said quickly. Name your price. I let the silence linger before I answered. My price was being valued fairly during the 9 years I gave to your company. That opportunity passed. Good luck. Then I hung up. Blocked the number. By the end of that year, the news was out. Not because I leaked it, but because fraud leaves fingerprints, and enough people were finally looking. Thomas was indicted along with 2 accomplices from accounting. The numbers were impossible to explain away. Daniel was placed on administrative leave, pending a full investigation into his oversight. The board brought in an outside firm to audit every financial process still standing. I didn't envy them. I had built those systems to be tight, efficient, and honest. What they weren't was easily replaceable. Garrett stepped down 6 months later. Vanessa left for a smaller firm in the Midwest. And the company, once considered a quiet powerhouse, was acquired within 2 years at a fraction of its former valuation. Meanwhile, we grew. Horizon expanded its footprint across 3 major cities. Our retention rate hit a company high. Clients praised our transparency. Employees knew where they stood. We didn't just talk about fairness. We proved it. Quarter after quarter. I reviewed every salary band myself. Quietly. Personally. Not because I didn't trust anyone else to do it, but because I remembered what it felt like to be overlooked. I never wanted anyone here to carry that kind of silence. Sometimes I think about the old office. The smell of burnt coffee from the break room. The buzz of the overhead lights. The way people whispered after meetings, as if speaking the truth too loudly might get them in trouble. I don't miss it. What I do remember is the day I stopped waiting. The day I realized I wasn't invisible. I was just in the wrong room. So if you're listening to this and something about it feels familiar, maybe too familiar, let me say this: don't wait for permission to speak up. Don't keep shrinking yourself to fit a space that benefits from you being small. Calculate your worth. Present the bill. And if they won't pay it, walk away. Because sometimes, the most powerful form of revenge is finally recognizing your own value and refusing to accept anything less.